Hello, everyone. Hello, and welcome to Honest HR Nitrous. I'm Bill, the company's expert. Thank you for joining me today. As I just fine-tuned my setup here, I just sat down and turned everything on, so hopefully everything's working. Yes, welcome to Honest HR Nitrous. This is the live stream I do a couple of times a week, where basically it's a Q&A session. I answer your questions, anything to do with careers, job interviews, resumes, networking, all that kind of stuff. It's all good. That's what we're here to do. TGIF, it's Friday the 13th. That's all I could say. So in that spirit of things, if you are seeing my beautiful face and my perfect collar, I just noticed it looks totally weird. You should see a chat box somewhere in the vicinity of my face and my perfect collar, depending on what device you're watching this on. Get in the chat. If you have been a subscriber to my channel for any amount of time, you should be able to get in there and ask questions. The title of today's episode 144 of Honest HR Nitrous, is Soft Skills You're Missing That Could Get You Hired. So that's what we're here to talk about. I imagine this would be a topic of interest for a hell of a lot of young people out there, people just starting out. We all got to start somewhere. God knows I did. And maybe some older people too, who've been in the game for a while, but maybe you're tuning into the stuff a bit later on, and that's cool. It is possible to go your whole life without tuning into this kind of stuff, so congratulations, you're here. So we're going to talk about that stuff. But before we do, just a quick public service announcement as I play around with my microphone that isn't oriented very well. Special thanks goes out to my YouTube channel members. You guys are awesome. Thank you for being a member. And my Patreons. And also to my super thanks donors. Those are really awesome to get. And to you, my viewers and participants, and everybody who participates. That's awesome. Okay, so without any further ado, let's talk about this. So soft skills that you're missing that can get you hired. Hopefully everybody knows what soft skills are. This is something that, a lot of people don't really respect. But unfortunately, the way the world works is that these are pretty damn important. And it's a real shame where you get people that are like insanely bright and insanely knowledgeable and insanely experienced, but people won't hire them or people won't want to work with them because of a deficiency in their soft skills, of all things. It's almost like there's a contract for $1 billion up for grabs, and you could get it because they're looking for someone that can do this insanely complicated thing. And guess what? You know how to do that, but you didn't get the contract because you showed up without wearing pants. So you didn't get it. Like, what a stupid reason, to not shine and not fulfill and reap the rewards of what you can do. You know what I mean? That's kind of like soft skills. Soft skills are like this thing that's always in the background. It shouldn't be that important, arguably, but it is, unfortunately. So it would be so stupid to lose opportunities because of this. You know what I mean? You have the technical chops, you have what it takes, but you're overlooked or you're passed over, I guess is the term, because you didn't have sufficient soft skills. You didn't make a great impression the first time they met you, and that's it. So what a stupid thing and what a tragedy. So that's what we're going to be talking about. In the chat, we've got Dr. Mo Diddy. Dr. Mo Diddy, in fact, wins the prize of being the first person in the chat. So congratulations to Dr. Mo Diddy. I'm curious to know what you're a doctor of. Doctor says, hello, sir. Hello, Dr. Mo Diddy. Simon Huckstep says, 3 teams interviewed this week. Things are picking up. Okay, that's good. And Cross-Trained Mind, I like your handle, says, no interviews in months, but just had a follow-up email on a potential role. Okay. Well, here's the deal. Since people are already bringing up like job interviews and stuff, there's 3 phases of the hiring process, right? If you're applying for posted jobs, that's the application phase, the interview phase, and the offer phase, right? And what gets you the interviews is your resume and your application, right? That's what's going to get you the interviews. So if you're not getting interviews, the problem is going to lie in your resume or your application or how you're doing that phase. If you're getting interviews, you're just not passing them, you're not being offered the job, then usually it comes down to obviously your interviewing skills, but specifically your soft skills. And that's what we're talking about today, because job interviews themselves are really a platform for you to display your soft skills, and that's pretty much the big thing that they're looking at. They're looking at soft skills and risk factors. Those are the two things they're looking for in a job interview, and they're paying attention to. So that's why what we're talking about today is very important. Now, before we just get carried away with the chat, I just want to mention a couple of things on this topic. Okay, so the topic was soft skills you're missing that could get you hired. What are we talking about? Well, number one, professional communication. Okay, that's a big one. Okay, being clear, being concise. A lot of people think that this is very easy and simple. It actually isn't. When you say something and then you were to ask them, okay, what did you understand from what this person said, right? Often we find that either they weren't listening, or they misunderstood, or they were distracted and they might have gotten the topic, but they didn't get any of the details you said. You know what I mean? So, or because they have certain experiences or certain preconceived notions about things, what you said, you thought you were being clear. Turns out what they understood was not what you said. They understood something else. They think they understood perfectly. It turns out that they misunderstood what you were saying. You'd be surprised how often this kind of thing happens, right? So that's what we're meaning when we're talking about professional communication, okay? Many people ramble, myself included. Many people sound uncertain. Many people write sloppy emails, things like this. This is what they mean by communication skills. Okay. Reliability. Okay. Doing what you said you would do. I can tell you in my experience, that's so much less common than what you would think. And lamentably so, when I find someone that, actually does what they say they're going to do, and they do it properly, and they do it like the way that you would assume they would do it, consistently, even when the pressure's on, that's pretty damn rare. In the past, I've hired those people simply for that, because they're not as common as you would think. Initiative, seeing something that needs done and just taking it upon yourself to do it without anyone telling you, right? That's something that's very, very good. In some environments, that's not rewarded as much as you think it would be, okay? But that's definitely a soft skill that, people really appreciate. It's someone they can rely on, as opposed to the type of person that basically thinks, oh, not my job. They didn't tell me to do it, so whatever. Not my job. I don't care, right? I can certainly understand how a lot of people in different environments think like that. It can be a survival mechanism, but generally speaking, they're looking for people that take initiative. Listening skills, somebody who actually listens before they respond. Once again, not as common as you would think. Like in job interviews, a lot of candidates answer the question that they wanted to hear, not the question that was asked, right? There's other things too, like being coachable. I mean, that's a minor one. Emotional control, staying in command of your emotions, not always the easiest thing to do. However, that's something that, we tend to improve as we get older, right? I'm thinking like when I was in my 20s and I had a career job and stuff like this. And it's like, yeah, you keep it real occasionally. You know what I mean? Lots of emotions, lots of blood chemicals, shall we say, and you tend to keep it real. You tend to, if there's a conflict with somebody, you tend to handle it in a, more unbounded way, shall we say. And when you get older, you learn that, okay, well, that's just not appropriate. You need to tone things down, and stuff like that. Okay, so there's a lot of other things, but I think that's good to start us off for this kind of thing. So that's what I'm referring to. These kind of things, these make great employees, and some of them, especially the communication stuff and the emotional intelligence stuff, that can actually get you hired, and you can pass job interviews because of that. Let's pick up from where we left off in the chat. Okay, so Cross-Trained Mind says, is it sad that I'm excited to get a no by email rather than keep getting ghosted? I don't know if it's sad or not, but it's a commentary on posted jobs. For the people that, like, I have to keep saying this, for the people that haven't quite tuned into this yet, most people don't get hired by applying to posted jobs on the internet. It's actually a terrible way to get hired because the competition's so fierce. You know, some of those jobs are fake, but all of those jobs are getting inundated with like hundreds and hundreds of applicants, so they can afford to be extremely picky. The only way you can really get selected for interviews for those types of things, generally speaking, is if you're customizing your resume to every job you apply to. So all the things in the job posting that they said that they wanted, you either have them or you've spoken to them directly in your resume right up front. That's a whole thing of like how to get interviews. We could get into that later. Sheen and Grief says, hello, Bill. When a job offer has a contact, like for an initial telephone contact, Mr. Placeholder will be happy to assist you. Any advantages calling Mr. Placeholder? No. Like, you see, you're talking about a job offer. So this is like after you've done job interviews and, you know, they've chosen you. They said, we want to hire you, and they send you an offer. And then they put a contact saying, you know, if you have any questions, we want you to talk. No, that's kind of a sign of an extremely large organization that's very bureaucratic if they're doing that. If that contact is someone other than the hiring manager or the recruiter, right? It doesn't matter who you talk to, the same rules apply, right? Know what makes sense for you and know what doesn't. And if it doesn't make sense, you say, you know, okay, well, I need this, and you stick to it. You know, you don't just try and push for as much as you can get and don't really think about what's the minimum you'll accept. Like, you know, it doesn't really matter who you deal with. What matters is how you handle it. You know, I don't know. I mean, depending on the circumstances, I might not even call. You know, if you've stated in a job interview or something, you said, I'm going to need this. Like, for example, they've asked you, what are your salary expectations? And you've probably given a range, right? And then they give you an offer. And let's say the offer has like substantially less compensation or some other issue than they stated explicitly in the job posting, or what they stated verbally in an interview. You know, I might not even respond, you know, depending on the situation. You know, I'm not going to make it easy for you guys to like win against me. If I've told you I need X and you give me an offer for X minus whatever, I might not respond. You know, now if that's inconvenient, oh well, then you'd have to call and figure out what's going on. Sheen and Grief says, sorry, I am talking about a job posting. Okay. So in a posting. Yeah, I'm actually surprised that they would actually offer that legitimately in this day and age. Usually they're heading away from that. They're heading towards more impersonal interaction. They're not offering more personal interactions to job candidates, right? They're actually, every other thing in this industry is moving away from it. So maybe they're farming out that to the equivalent of like a customer service center or a call center or something. I don't know. I have no idea. There shouldn't be any harm in contacting it, but once again, it doesn't matter if you do or not. It matters how you handle the negotiation, like whether they're offering something that is acceptable to you or not. And if it's not, depending on the details. Cross-Trained Mind says, I'm an introvert and typically have trouble with soft skills. Yeah, and that will hurt a lot of your efforts until the day you die, unless you work on it. I know exactly what that feels like. I myself am an introvert, a pretty extreme introvert too. I'm a pretty extreme introvert, and if you're doing the Myers-Briggs thing, I'm a pretty extreme judger. I took that test in high school. I took that test a couple of times in my 30s, 40s, and then I've taken that test like recently, and it hasn't changed. But the thing is, you overcome stuff. You smooth out the weaknesses, and that's a general trend as people get older. So the good news, cross-trained mind, is that this stuff, it really isn't that hard to learn. Once you know what specifically you're supposed to do, and then you practice it a little bit, it's actually a hell of a lot easier than things you're probably good at. You're probably good at technical things, and those are a hell of a lot harder to learn than this crap, I can tell you. Universal Woman says, I'm having a hard time figuring out if these recruiters from third-party companies are legit or not. Would love to hear how to know if I'm connecting with a scammer or a legit recruiter. Tiring phone interviews. I have the soft skills but exhausted to perform when it's not. Yeah, I don't blame you. I mean, who wants to talk to these clowns? Listen, there's no like absolute test to see if someone's a scammer. It's just the noticing of red flags, usually, right? That's going to do that. And there's some pretty common red flags. Like, for example, first of all, the conventional wisdom is to apply for the job directly off a company's website, not through a job aggregator like Indeed or LinkedIn, right? Because the thing is, an aggregator like Indeed, what they're doing is they're like, technically nowadays they do actually post some jobs. But what traditionally they do is they go and they crawl the internet, they find actual jobs posted in, various places, and then they put links to that, and then they display all those jobs on their website, right? So let's say, I don't know, Microsoft posts a job or something, right? That job will be on the Microsoft website. It'll also be on Indeed, because Indeed or LinkedIn or any of those, like ZipRecruiter, Monster, if they're still around, they crawl the web, they find a job on the Microsoft site, so they display it on their site, right? Now, if you see it on Indeed, the conventional wisdom is don't apply to it from Indeed. Go to the Microsoft site and apply to it directly from there if you're going to do it, right? That's the idea. So that's a start, because sometimes you get scammers that repurpose jobs and they change the contact information and like stuff like this, right? So at least you're going to Microsoft when you're applying for it. Okay, that's the first thing. Secondly, if it's overly general, that's a red flag. If they botch up like spelling and grammar, that's usually a red flag. Things like this. If they put like a lot of pressure on you to tell them things like personal things or confidential things, like they want your pay information, they want your social insurance number, social security number, things like that, like really early, and they put a lot of pressure on you. Those are all red flags. So you can sometimes spot it through these. There's no like single way of determining absolutely if it's a scam or not. Right up until the point where they've like stolen your identity or something. You know what I mean? You just look for those red flags, and if there's too many of them, you just don't proceed. I've done videos on this where I do a much better job of going through a lot of details of things specifically. So maybe check that out. But once again, to all these people, like, just remember, 85% of jobs are not posted. So instead of persisting with stupid crap like this, that like it's like a law of diminishing returns, instead tune into the hidden job market, tune into like, how you get those jobs through networking. And if you're an introvert, I'm talking to you, okay? Don't think that when I say networking, it's just like for extroverts. I'm talking about introverts. 95% of the networking that you can do, you do it online. You could, between websites like Google Maps and LinkedIn, I mean, those two alone, you can connect to most jobs that are not posted. You connect to all the decision makers that are deciding, they're actually looking for people, but they don't have a job posted officially, right? So tune into that. Do your own research on that. You're missing out on the vast majority of the jobs, and also, coincidentally, pretty much almost all of the good jobs, okay? So it's worth looking into. I've done extensive talking about this in the past. I'm not going to rehash it all here, but look, don't take my word for this. Go and find out for yourselves. It's as simple as going to ChatGPT or Grok or Gemini or any of those and saying, look, are most jobs posted or not? And then it will tell you that they're not. And then you say, okay, well, how do you get them? And just that basic step will show you that there's this whole universe of stuff there. So check that out. Alexander Mobley says, appreciate you. Well, thank you, Alexander, and thank you for being a member. That's awesome. And if you have any questions, let me know. Sheenan Grief says, apologies, chat. I will check my messages before hitting enter next time. Don't worry about it. You're doing fine, Sheenan Grief. A universal woman. I thought that said something else earlier. I thought it was like some parody of that. Okay, that helps. Sometimes companies use temp agencies. Would they list these roles on their company website too? Possibly. There's no absolute yes they will or no they won't. Most of the time I would say no, but you never know. Okay. Playing LinkedIn games has helped me re-network with old coworkers. Good for introverts. Now listen. When I say network, okay, this is your first lesson here of something hopefully that is going to change your life. When I say network, I don't mean just talk to people you know or you knew. Okay? The most powerful thing in this umbrella of networking is reaching out to people you don't know, okay? Because there's far more people out there that you don't know than the ones you do know, okay? And putting yourself forward for a job, saying, listen, I know of your company, okay? I live a couple of blocks away from your company. I know you do great work in this area, okay? I am a fully qualified whatever, fill in the blank. I specialize in solving this problem. If ever you are looking for someone who can do that for you, please let me know, because I would love to work with you. That's it. Have yourself a great day. Right? Very, very simple message. I mean, I've said this many times. That goes to someone you don't know. Now, if they're not looking for someone right now, big deal. They ignore it, or they might send a reply back, but that's rare. They just ignore it usually. But a certain percentage of the time, 5%, 1%, somewhere in there, could even be as high as 10%, they're looking for someone like you right now. Like if you go to the appropriate person, So for example, let's say you went to school and you got an engineering degree or whatever. You went to trade school, you got your journeyman ticket on, you're a carpenter, you're a framer or something. I don't know, whatever you've got, right? Out there are people that are looking for carpenters or engineers right now, okay? And 85% of these people have not posted a job publicly. Why? Because they don't need to. Because they already have a lot of, wherever they look, people want this job, right? So they don't need to spend money and effort trying to publicize this job. There's a lot of people out there looking for this type of job, right? So they don't need to publicize it. The moment they mention it to their existing team, that team is coming back to them and saying, hey, I got a brother or a friend or a former coworker that would be perfect for this. Shall I tell them to contact you? Right? Okay. So when I say networking, I'm not talking about just talk to, your family and your friends and former coworker. I'm talking about learn how to reach out to these people. Between Google Maps, you can find all the employers, and LinkedIn is used to look inside all of those employers to the individual that's the decision maker. They'll tell you who they are, And they'll even give you the way to send a message right to them. Okay, so if you know how to use these tools, that's what they can do. And between those two tools, you can find so many opportunities, right? That's how these things work. Okay, so all you have to do is send that kind of template message. That's the simplest form of this. There are many, many other things you can do, but that's just one of the simplest things I know. Just sending that default template message out in the same way that you pepper the world with job applications. You pepper, the decision makers in your hometown, in your industry that have potential to employ you with this basic message, right? And the way people get hired is not because they're the most qualified person in the world. It's because they were the only one in line, the one that took the initiative to say, hey, I would love to work for you. I can do this. If ever you're looking, most of the time they're not looking, but the 5% of the time they are looking, they go, hey, let's talk. What you said is interesting. Let's talk some more, right? Because they happen to be looking for that thing right now. Okay, so do your research on this and learn the whole thing. If you want to go deeper with me with this kind of stuff, check out that course, okay? It's in the description box below. It tells you how to do all this stuff and more. America First 21 says, hello here for the class, no question. Okay, awesome. Well, thanks for letting me know. No, I see that. I know people listen to this, like they're driving or they're working or they're jogging or whatever it is that people do. I wouldn't know. I just work all the time. That's kind of a pathological thing. But whatever it is that people do, they walk the dog or whatever. They listen to this, so they're not actually typing questions, but they're just kind of there. Cross-train, a universal woman says, what is a universal woman? That's like a woman who is universal. Like, you can do everything? That's cool. I don't think I've met anyone who can do everything, but that would be interesting to see. I would be intimidated by someone like that. Because I can't do everything, that's for damn sure. Cross-train mind says, how do we use Google Maps? Let me show you. Let's see if we can do this. Let's do this together, okay? It'll be a very, what do they say, warm and nurturing kind of thing we do together. Here. Okay, so I'll tell you what. I could do this, but you tell me what city are you in? Are you in a city? If you're not in a city, maybe you're in a region, right? Tell me that, and then I'll do this preferably with your hometown so that we do this together, okay? So cross-train mind, you tell me that, and away we go, and I will show you what you can do. What would also be helpful is telling me, what is your industry? Like, what do you do? Are you a lawyer? Are you a doctor? Are you a framer? Are you a person who stacks boxes? Do you work in a warehouse? Do you go door to door? Do you have a lemonade stand? This kind of stuff. Tell me what you do. Okay, so cross-trained mind says Mount Pleasant, MI. Is that Michigan, Mississippi, Missouri, or something else? I have no idea. Michigan. Okay, so that's kind of nearer to me. That's an actual place. Okay, so we go to maps, right? So I went to maps. I clicked the maps button. Okay, now I'm looking at here, I'll make it bigger. I'm looking at a map of, I guess that's Mount Pleasant. That sounds very pretty. But you got to be careful because sometimes they name places like ironic names. Like they'll say like, terrible mountain. It's like a big hole in the ground or something like that, right? It's kind of like ironic nicknames. They'll call somebody tiny when they're like 15 feet tall, right? 15'6". Okay, so Mount Pleasant, probably the most badass place in America or something. Okay, now let's see here. Cross-trained mind. I'm a data analyst with a strong general AI background. Okay, now listen, you'll have to excuse my ignorance. I am not an AI type person, so I'm just trying to guess at the industries where maybe you would be employed. So now that we're looking at this Mount Pleasant, okay, the obvious thing would be anything related to IT. So there's, I'm just going to type IT. I mean, I'm sure this will list nothing, but okay, Journey Managed IT Services. So you've got, now if I click on a place, it's going to show me the details of it. I'm going to make this smaller, actually. There we go. Okay, so here's the idea. I type in a name of an industry here. How about IT security? Security, if I've forgotten how to type. Okay. Now, you can see on the map, like, bam, all these places pop up. So we got a place here, Mid-Michigan Security Systems. Now, if I click any place, okay, it gives me the detail. It gives me the address, the website, the phone number. So if I really wanted to, I could go to each of these websites and scan to see if they have job listings. I do not recommend that, okay? What's this down here? Mount Pleasant Computer Services, LLC. Social Security Administration Office, okay? So that's security, but how about like animation? I mean, I don't know. I don't know what people do in whoa. Okay, that's not what I wanted. Let's try this again. Okay, so IT security, animation. What is it doing? Why is it doing that? It's never done that before. Okay. Let's go back to Mount. Oh, I see what it's doing. It's defaulting to my hometown. God, that's annoying. Let's see. Okay. Has Google changed the way this works? And I'm only finding out now live. Let's see. Instead of IT security, like, it should be able to do it right here in what you're looking at. There we go. Now, one thing I want to make clear is that if you're looking at something here, okay, if you zoom in, okay, you click this button here, search this area, and then it finds more stuff, right? So My Michigan Medical Center, I don't know why that would be a security specialist. Magnum Ballistics, Bell Tire, okay, whatever. Animation Studio. This is annoying. They've changed how this works, ironically, after demonstrating this for years. Okay, anyway, so obviously there's something up with this, but basically what you can do is you can, maybe I need to restart this. You can look at your hometown, and you can type in any industry in this box here, and then all the businesses, all the organizations that are in that business that have identified they're anything to do with that, just like this, right? I typed in IT security, and you get all these companies. This won't even work. All these companies listed, right? And that's just only in the place where I was looking, right? So what you use this for is to find all the employers near you. God, something's up with this browser. Okay, let's try this again. Now I'm on a mission. Mount Pleasant, maps, get rid of that. And what were we doing? We were doing animation, but you could do something else. Anything to do with like IT. So how about data center? Now, Americans spell it different. Yeah, there we go. CNTER. Okay, they've changed the functionality. I've obviously got a setting not set here. I need to do it in Mount Pleasant. Anyway, you get the idea. This is not working for me, unfortunately. But that's the idea. So the first step is to like do that. You saw me do it once. Okay, I went to the hometown and I typed in the name of an industry, and then bam, all the organizations that you're looking at in that area pop up that are identified as anything to do with that industry, right? So the way this normally works is that in like a city of like 500,000 people, you can build like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of targets of like, big organizations, small organizations, that are in an industry or they're around that industry. So IT You would look up data center, you'd look up systems admin, you'd look at computer services, you'd look at hosting, you would look at developing, you'd look at gaming, you would look at, like any of these terms that are similar or related to that industry. And it's going to pop up different targets each time. So you make a list of the places that have potential to employ you. Okay? Some of these people could be hiring, you don't know, right? Now, the idea then is what you do is you then go to LinkedIn, okay? And you're going to ignore the whole job side of LinkedIn because it's borderline useless. Instead, you're going to do a people search, okay? The people search, it finds individuals. So first, you're going to set it to your hometown. So if you're in Mount Pleasant, you're going to say, I want to confine my search to Mount Pleasant or the Mount Pleasant area, okay? Surrounding area. And I'm going to type in the name of some of these companies. So we were looking at this. Let's say we're like here, Journey Managed IT Services. Okay, so here is the name of the company. So what you do, you copy paste that name and you go into LinkedIn, you paste this in the search box and you say, I want to do a people search in Mount Pleasant for this company. So what it's going to do is it's going to find you all the individuals at Journey Managed IT Services, okay? Somebody might be the janitor, somebody might be the owner, somebody might be the office manager, somebody might be the leader of the R&D team or something. I don't know, right? So of all those people, some of them are going to be decision makers of who they hire for someone like you, and a lot of people aren't, right? So the general rule is you go as high as possible, okay? That's what I recommend. Or you could just go directly to the person that's going to hire someone like you. So they're one level above you usually, right? So if you're a data analyst, maybe somebody's title is lead data analyst or IT services manager or something like that. So they could be the person you want to talk to. So you send that template message saying, hello, I'm here. I'm a kick-ass data analyst. I've got lots of experience. I live close by. I know you guys do a lot of work in this area. I'd love to work with you. If ever you're looking, please let me know. That's it. And you may never hear from them again, but if they are looking for someone right now, guess who's going to be at top of their list? So that's the idea, okay? So that's like the most basic thing you can do, as someone who's like an introvert networking, right? And then the idea is that the only time you would ever go down and talk to somebody or talk to them on the phone would be when they've expressed an interest. They said, hey, we might actually be looking for someone. We're not sure yet, but I'd like to talk to you some more. Can you come down, right? It's not a job interview because you haven't applied for a job. This is a referral. It feels like a referral. It's generally very positive. People are asking you to come down, so they're very polite. It's not like a job interview where they treat you like cattle, right? So anyway. Sheen and Grief, Bill, you use ChatGPT, you are an IT AI person. Well, I appreciate that. But it's kind of like saying I've used Google a couple of times in my life, therefore I'm a IT person. It's like, no, I'm not. Malaysia. Yes, we could do that too. Add the zip code. That was extremely helpful. Thank you. Hey, Bill, always great to see you. Now, if you want to see an example where that actually goes right, okay, instead of me making a Charlie of myself in front of the whole world, there's a link below, linked in the description box of this live stream. It's linked to a video on my channel called How Successful People Get Jobs. Okay, so if you look at the description box under this live stream, you see that link? Click that link. That's where I demonstrated it actually works. Okay, and then I go into LinkedIn and I show you that part too. Okay, it's a little bit easier in that case because I was doing I was doing it where I was looking at my hometown, right? So I don't know if that's some weird preference for Google Maps now. It's trying to boot me out of Mount Pleasant, Michigan. This is what happens when you get an old guy like teaching you IT stuff. I remember in like around the year 2000, I was working in a place and they hired like a 7-year-old dude to work with me. And no offense to this guy, he was awesome, but he had never used, he didn't know how to use a mouse, let alone a computer. And I remember thinking like, really? You know, I gotta work with this guy. Like, the whole job is on computers, by the way. But yeah, so that was fun. Now I feel like him. This is wonderful. Hello to Killer 0259 says, "Hey Bill, always great to see you." Well, it's great to see you too, Killer Zero. Thank you for being here. Yeah, so like anyway, we were technically the title of this stream is about soft skills. I don't know if you guys want to talk about that or you want to talk about something else. Let me know what your questions are, and I will just answer them, whatever they are. You know, anything to do with careers, I guess, like job search. Cross-trained Mind says, "If ever you're in Mount Pleasant, let me know and I'll buy you dinner." Well, thank you. Thank you. Are you going to slip a little something into the dinner? No, I appreciate it, Cross-trained Mind. I mean it. I like your handle. You know, to me, it suggests systems thinking. You know, people that are trained in skills in different areas, I think, are really interesting. Those are the people that I've hired in the past, and I think it's awesome because they have a lot of kind of emergent capabilities that someone just trained in one won't have. You know, you get two employees. One's trained in A, the other one's trained in B. Right? Together they have certain capabilities. However, instead you hire one employee or two employees that are both trained in both A and B. You get a different result. You get people that not only can do A and B, but they can do all kinds of other things too. Because they're used to transplanting their skills and they see patterns and things and they think in systems. I think it's great. So while we're waiting for the next questions to roll on in, as a reminder to everyone, if you're watching this, you want to go deeper with me, check out this course. This is linked in the description box below. It's my Get Hired course. All my advice in one place, how to get hired in the posted job market, also how to get hired in the hidden job market, and it's tailored to introverts. So if that's you, check it out. You know, a lot of good stuff there. The real gem is the hidden job market stuff. It's not something that can be explained in little 5-minute pieces. It's a lot of principles that all stack on top of each other. So check that out. Very popular course. I also have two others. This one, if you want to learn business, but that's probably not most people here. But this one is about communication skills, and that's actually basically the topic of this live stream. So if you're wanting to improve your communication skills and your soft skills in general, check this out. Everything I learned about communication skills going from a supervisor to a CEO, I put into this course. So the people that could take advantage of this are people that, first of all, they want to be perceived as being promotable. You're wasted in this job. You should be moving up. Communication skills will do that. It's a bit silly, but it's true because communication skills are immediate. If you've got a degree in engineering or, you know, a PhD in 18th century French poetry, people can't tell that about you just by looking at you or by meeting you for 2 minutes. But they can tell your communication skills and abilities in about 10 seconds flat. So it has a disproportionately large effect. So if you're wanting to improve your communication skills, check out this course. Link in the description box below. Cross-trained Mind says, "Thanks. I have both computer science and cognitive science backgrounds." Ooh. I'm not 100% sure what cognitive science is. Like, obviously it's the science of thinking, but beyond that, is it like neural nets and stuff like that? Like, I know in engineering, in computer science, you know, some of the advanced computer engineering courses were on like automata and neural nets. It's like an extension of digital logic and stuff. It goes into that stuff. And obviously they've made tremendous progress in that stuff in the last 30 years since I learned it at school. I took one course in it where the end of the course was they introduced neural nets. So that was like the extreme end of, digital logic. And I took that as part of electrical engineering. So I imagine cognitive science is kind of like that. Or like in the world of business, they study things like organizational behavior, which I've mentioned before is an extremely fascinating area. It's like how people behave in organizations. So all the real stupid stuff, like when you see something that doesn't make any sense at work, like this person is behaving this way, and this person technically reports to the boss, but the boss kind of is deferring to them. They actually have more power than their boss. They're dictating to their boss how it's going to be, rather than the other way around. And you think like, that's stupid. That doesn't make sense. It's actually a very legitimate thing. There's legitimate mechanisms going on. You can predict it. You can architect it. You can solve it. Things like this. So it's actually really cool. Cognitive science is a combination of computer science, philosophy, and psychology. Okay, interesting. Okay, America First, 21. Question about job fairs. Are they worth it? How do you present yourself to them? They are worth it for certain people looking for certain things. If you're a student and you've never had a career job, but you're coming out of school maybe and you're wanting to get your first career job, they're obviously useful for that. That's what they're often geared around. So yes. So what you would do, in my opinion, is you go there and you bring a few resumes, like you print your resume out like in hard copy, but bring a ton of business cards. Go get your own business card, like for like literally $20 US. You can get like a huge stack of like professional business cards. If you're wondering what to put on there, just, like hopefully you have a LinkedIn profile. The header of your LinkedIn profile, that's essentially what you're going to put on a business card. It says your name. It says a tagline, like who you are, like student or computer science graduate, or, like whatever you are, right? Whoever you want to be to these people. Okay. And then all your contact information, maybe like a photo, like a headshot, just you could take it with your cell phone or whatever. Just like a nice professional headshot. Don't be like that. Look friendly and approachable and someone they would want to say hello to. And just put that on a business card. And then you go down to the job fair and you keep business cards ideally in like a chest pocket, something like this, somewhere you can easily grab them and give it out. And what that does is it's more of a prompt for the other person. So, when you talk to somebody, when you're done talking and you're kind of winding it down, you take out your card, you give it to them. That's a cue for them to give you their card. So you have a record of every single person you talk to. You got their phone number, their title, what company they're from, email address, all that kind of stuff, right? And then you go down to the job fair, you look at all the different booths or whatever you call them, and you talk to the person. You go up to the person at the booth. You say, so, I understand you're from this company, like what do you guys do? Like I see you from the big giant display behind you. It's something to do with hydroelectricity or something. What's what are the opportunities that you guys present, and what are you looking for? And then they'll talk your ear off about what they do, what they're looking for. And the idea is that you go down there. These are supposedly people that are looking for young job seekers like yourself. So you do that, but then the real value, I think, is in following up afterwards, right? So if you've got somebody's business card, what they were saying was actually really cool. There's this whole industry, and it looks like lots of people are making money and doing some good. So that's fascinating to you. You send them an email, say, hello, I met you at the job fair. I thought what you said to me was fascinating. You were telling me about this and that. Listen, if ever you guys are looking, I'm quite interested in learning more. And at that point, you could ask for almost anything. You could say, well, please consider me for opportunities. Or you could say, I actually, if it's possible, I'm wondering if it's possible for me to get a quick tour, something like that, right? I mean, that would be amazing if you can get it. And some people will give that to you. Other people won't because it's outside of what they do. But depending on who you talk to, any manager, they can invite you down and give you a quick tour, of their place. So, that can open a lot of doors. And then all of a sudden you're there, you're seeing what they do, you're talking right to the decision maker, right? They show you something and the correct answer is like, wow, that's pretty exciting, And then you show a little bit about it, you ask them an intelligent question, stuff like that. So it can go in different ways, but that's kind of the idea. I would go there with a stack of business cards, maybe a couple of resumes printed out, and then go and talk to people. Say, what do you guys do? And, like, what are you looking for? And what opportunities do you have? Right? And then see where it goes. Does that make sense? That would be my very general kind of advice for that kind of thing. So, yeah, they are useful. Some I'm sure are more useful than others, but that's kind of the general thing. Cross-trained minds says cognitive. Okay, we talked about that, and we talked about America First. I mean, you don't really have to present yourself other than to say, well, my name is X, and I'm a recent graduate of this, and I'm interested in hydroelectricity, whatever it is. Just looking around to see what there is, and you guys seem to have a story to tell, But you don't lead with that. Like, basically, you lead with a question. You say, like, so, I understand you guys are in hydroelectricity. This looks fascinating. What do you guys do? Is it like a small operation? Is it a big operation? And then you let them start talking, and they'll tell you all about it. What are you looking for? What are the opportunities? What do you have to offer? Are you expanding? Are you growing? That kind of stuff. Is your industry changing? See, these kind of questions, people can talk for hours sometimes on some of these topics. So lead with questions. If you're wondering physically, how do I talk to them? Lead with the question. Say, so, what's this all about, Or if you lack the social skills, just I guess it's dumbed down a bit. You could say, so who the hell are you? I wouldn't say that, but, what's all this? Okay, get in the chat. We got 32 people here, and I'm here just to answer your questions, so send me some questions. Or you can make comments about how amazing my hair is today, or something like that. I mean, hey, it's all welcome. It's Friday, so it's Friday the 13th, right? So that would get anyone excited. Go home, and I don't know if it's possible, but job search is damn stressful, and it eats away at your self-esteem like nobody's business. But if you can, if at all possible, on the weekend, even for just half a day, try to think about other things if that's even possible. Try and give your brain a rest. Go force yourself to do something you normally enjoy, Right? They made a series of horror movies called Friday the 13th. Go and watch some of those. It'll be a rest for your brain, it'll force you to think about something else, right? And not just this. You need to rest your brain a little bit and think about something else on the weekend as an investment in being able to kick ass Monday morning at job search. You know what I mean? So if you possibly can, try it. That would be my wonderful PhD level psychology advice to you. If you're going through that. I know it's extremely difficult being between jobs. Nothing to sneeze at. America First says, have you tried Monster energy drinks? No, I haven't actually. I've seen them everywhere. I have family members that have come in like drinking one of those or whatever. I find Red Bull is enough to me. I have enough problems just being addicted to Red Bull than I don't need any other vice, so that's why I've stayed away from it. Cross-Trained Mind says, thank you for all the great videos. I've watched a good number of them, mostly to help with interview prep. Okay, well, good. Well, thank you for saying so, and I'm glad they were at least somewhat helpful. That's good. Hopefully you can kick ass by now. You know what I mean? If you watched a lot of my videos. Remember, practice makes perfect. Like, it's one thing to, learn the theory of, what to say when someone asks you a question. It's another thing to go out and rehearse it, right? So if you can, do the mock interviews, right? You've probably heard me say that a bunch of times. Go and get like a family member or a friend or someone just to help you with this. If you know the theory of what you should say, now it's just a matter of practicing. How do you say this? Shezarian says, sorry if you've been asked this 100 times, but what about the question, why did you leave your last job? Yeah, don't worry about the fact that I might have been asked it before. Ask whatever's on your mind. So why did you leave your last job? That can be awkward if, you don't want to reveal this because maybe you were fired or maybe you were laid off, and the thing is, the reason why they're asking this question is to look for red flags, right? Because you see, the thing is, if you got fired from your last job and then you tell them this, they're going to say, okay, so you're the type of person that gets fired from jobs. So now we're going to assume that if we hire you, there's a higher likelihood that you could get fired from this job if we hired you, right? That's the reason why they're asking this question. It's to look for risk factors, and this is a risk factor. So here's the deal. If you were laid off, there's absolutely no harm in saying that. You could say, I was laid off. The company was downsizing. They made a business decision to cut a certain percentage of their staff. And because I was a junior employee or whatever, that meant me. So I was laid off with a bunch of other people all at the same time. And that's how I left, right? Now, if you were laid off with a bunch of people, say that, because that's further evidence that there's nothing wrong with you. And it's not a reflection of you. You say, I was fired or I was let go or terminated without cause, right? I didn't do anything. They were just laying people off. Now, if you left a company or an organization, if you weren't laid off, but you just decided to leave, you quit, right? Or you decided to leave, that's kind of a gray area. It's not necessarily a bad thing in itself, but the problem is that they can then turn around and say, okay, well, you're the type of person that quits things. So if we were to hire you for this job, there's a higher likelihood that you could just quit 2 months into it. You're a quitter. You've shown that. You've demonstrated that through your actions in the past. And recruiters are going on this principle of past behavior predicts future behavior. So if you did something in the past that you're admitting to, they're going to assume that that's what you will do again. You see, that's why they're asking these, right? Okay. So if you quit, it's up to you if you want to say that. You could be super conservative and say, well, I was let go, or something. Like you could maybe phrase it like that. I wouldn't judge you too hard if you were. Remember, a job interview is not a deposition. You don't want to lie outright, but you don't have to reveal things you don't want to reveal. You're under no obligation to these people to admit things or say things you don't want to say. It's up to them to decide what to do with that. So that's kind of a gray area if you left. Now, if you were fired, okay, and they ask you, why did you leave your last job? Then it gets problematic, because if you admit that you were fired, unfortunately, the reality is it can be the kiss of death. They say, okay, you've gotten fired from your last job, so therefore you're not a good worker. Therefore, if we were to hire you, you would get fired from this job because you're a bad worker. So say no more, right? And the problem is that they're making judgments about you based on stereotypes and assumptions, right? This is the problem. This is why I say it's not a deposition. I wouldn't judge you too harshly if you're not getting ambushed into answering these questions that make you look bad, that essentially disqualify you, because it's not any kind of reflection on you. The last company you worked for could have been the most insane, exploitative company ever that was about to be shut down by the government for all kinds of crimes. That happens. They fired you. That's actually more of a testament of how awesome you are, rather than, they kept you, right? So you know what I mean? They're making assumptions based on biases, stereotypes, and assumptions. And, you have the perfect right to guard yourself against that, right? So if you fit into any of these categories that you don't want to mention, you left or you were let go for cause, I would simply say, when they say, why did you leave your last job? I would say, well, I was ready to do more. And then you talk about what you're ready to do, what you're looking for. And coincidentally, that's describing this job that you're interviewing for. So you turn this potential ambush question where they're trying to get the dirt on you, you turn it into a platform to talk about how you fit with this job. That's what I'd recommend. Don't go into the details of, anything negative. And that includes this, why something didn't work out. Whether you quit, whether you were let go, those are all different versions of something not working out, right? So avoid it. Don't talk about it. And you know what's going to happen. The moment you mention it, they're going to ask more probing questions to get all the details. So don't even mention it, in my opinion. That would be my advice. Okay, so that's how you pass that question. And you get through it without admitting anything that makes you look bad, and instead talking about how it actually makes you look good. You're looking for something exactly like this. This is what you want to do, right? So hopefully that makes sense. Mel says, I have a second interview with a district manager for a potential general manager position. What soft skills can I use to show that I'm qualified to be given the GM position given my lead position? Okay, well, there's some general things I could say here, but what trumps all of them is mirror them, because, for example, some general soft skills that will make you a better general manager, that all general managers should have, is you need to have above average communication skills. You need to be easy to talk to. You need to be the type of person that can listen well, that is in control of your emotions. You can interoperate with many different types of people, right? This is the thing that managers need to have and that most people don't realize. It's very easy for all of us to get along with and work together with people who are exactly like us. That's not a real skill. Everyone can do that well. I don't care how introverted you are. I don't care how antisocial you are. You can usually get along with people who are exactly like you. You know what I mean? Where the challenge is being able to get along with and interoperate with people who are really not like you at all. You know what I mean? So if you're an introvert, they're an extrovert. If you make decisions based on facts, they make decisions based on feelings. if your background is accounting, their background is sales. If you came here straight out of school, they never really went to school. They learn everything through experience. If you've always been in this industry, the aerospace industry, they cut their teeth in the construction industry for many years. You know what I'm saying? So go try and relate to that person. You know what I mean? That's going to be a challenge. They are not going to think like you. They're not going to react like you. They're not going to communicate like you. They're not going to work like you, right? That's where the challenge is. So for a general manager or any manager where you're going to be managing people, you're going to be in situations where you're going to have to interoperate with people who are really not like you. You could be 30 years old, they could be 75, You could be 75 years old, they're 21. You know what I mean? Like, you still have to work together, you have to interoperate. So those are some very powerful skills, being able to do that with many different types of people, right? So that means that you have to be a little bit of a chameleon. You can't just always be the same person to deal with, like, no matter who you're dealing with. You have to adapt to the other person to a degree, right? So personally, for me, that's what I would look for if I'm hiring a general manager. That type of person. On a personal level, and when it comes to like soft skills, they would have to demonstrate that. So one obvious way to do that is if you're doing a panel interview. You said you're going back for is it a second interview? Yeah. So they're going to go deeper. And usually that's when they start to bring in other people to the interview. So there might be a recruiter, a hiring manager, the owner of the company, and maybe a consultant or something, right? These people are different people. Maybe there's like the consultant is like a salesperson or a psychologist, You have the owner who might be like, a sales type person maybe. You've got the hiring manager who's maybe a technical person, and you have the HR person who's like an HR person, right? So being able to relate to all of these different people and be likable to all of them is going to be a real good trait. If the boss likes you, but all the others really they're not clicking with you, that might be a red flag. So for me, that would be like a pretty important thing. Okay. If you kind of show you've got the soft skills, the other things can come later, right? That's what I would say. I mean, obviously there's a lot to it. There's obviously, you have to know your stuff. There's all the technical side of it. If you're a manager, I mean, personally for me, I would like you to know management, There's a lot of people that have just done a job for years who think now they can be the boss, and they can. It's just they usually end up being terrible bosses. Okay, so if you've been a lead hand or something like that, or a team lead, you've been maybe the de facto manager for a while. You've been doing the job of the manager, but officially you're a worker, right? So that can really position you well to move into a GM role. Does that make sense? We can get into this deeper if you'd like, if you have any follow-up questions. AlexCon13 says, how do you fight, I think you're trying to say ageism? I was let go because the company restructured. I have lots of skills I gained during the 11 years tenure with them. Now 51, I'm just getting back. How impressive my resume is. Okay, well, I mean, I don't really dwell too much on like biases and things like this. People are just biased in general about a million different things. Everybody's got, when does an opinion end and a bias begin? It's very hard to say. Who's not biased against a 51-year-old? Another 51-year-old. If the person hiring is 25 years old, then yeah, they may, look down on you because you're 51. You know what I'm saying? If the person hiring you is 70 years old, they could potentially look down at you because you're 51. But a 51-year-old is usually not going to have a bias against another 51-year-old because that person is 51. You know what I mean? So that's kind of something in there. Now, the only thing that I know of that you can really do if the person's mind isn't totally closed is you can proactively bring up some of the stereotypes associated, the negative stereotypes or traits associated with a 51-year-old, right? Like, I know this is a bigger problem. I believe this is a bigger problem in the United States than where it is where I am in Canada, because, for example, in the US, there's issues of, like, if you have to go away on disability, companies pay that, right? They pay for you to go off on disability, whereas in Canada, that's all paid by the government, so the companies don't care as much, so they're not as biased. So as far as that issue goes, in the States, they have that added problem. People are biased against older workers, especially like in skill trades and stuff, because, you know, if you've been working for 50 years and it's all been in an unergonomic environment and they think you might have like an injury due, you know, and they don't want to hire you because you're an older worker, they think, okay, we'll hire you, and then 6 months later you'll have a injury because of 50 years working, you know, in an unergonomic way. You know, we're the ones left holding the bag. We've got to, like, you go off on disability, we got to cover your expenses, and then, you know, we're the ones left holding the bag, essentially. So I know that that's a thing in the States more than it is other places. You know, but, like, for example, what are some of the other common complaints about older people? I mean, I don't consider 51 old. That's like younger than I am. But it's like, you know, okay, you're not trainable. You don't have a desire to learn new things. You resist change. You are stuck in your ways. You only want to do things the old way. You might have problems communicating and working with younger people. You know, things like that. Like, whatever the standard, you know, the common complaints are about older people, you proactively address those. Like, you can say them in interviews. It's like, look, you know, I'm actually big on learning. I like to learn for fun, and I'm quite interested in the latest, you know, computer systems and stuff. I think that, you know, the last sort of like IT changes that have happened in the last 5 years are very exciting. They're automating more and more. That's allowing us to do more and more in our jobs. We don't have to, like, do all the grunt work, all this manual work, entering data and stuff. I think it's cool that, you know, they can do all that automatically, and we're more like supervisors or managers of, you know, what the IT systems are doing, rather than being like data entry people. I think that's great, you know, and I'm actually excited about, you know, where they're going to go with this. You know, something like that. And then they get the impression, okay, you're not someone that's, like, you know, stuck in their ways and resistant to change. You're proactively showing that that's not you. And then if they're still somewhat open-minded about it, then they don't fall into these biases like ageism, where they just assume you're going to have all these problems. Right? That's the only thing that I know of you can do that's effective. The only other thing I recommend is just go where they appreciate you, you know? And that doesn't relate to just ageism. That relates to anything where people look at you and they think, nah, you can't do it for whatever reason. Obviously, you know, you want to leave these people behind and go to where, like, find where people are open-minded to you. You know, so, like, that advice, that general advice applies to ageism. That's how I recommend dealing with it, you know? But that's just me. Baby Tony, 27. Are you 27? Says, hi, how are you? I'm great. Glad to see you. Well, I'm glad you're here. I'm also in Canada. It is snowing a lot right now. That's how you know you're in Canada. Either that or Norway. Or Siberia. Yeah, well, hello to a fellow Canuck. remember, we all take the dog sled to work, and we live in igloos, and we dress up as the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. And then we mount our horses. So for those of you who have never been to Canada, you pretty much got the whole Canadian experience right there. Oh yeah, and we're boring and spineless, apparently, but we have kicked ass in both world wars. So I don't know how true that is. Mel says, thank you. I was given many managerial responsibilities except the paperwork, like for P&Ls and write-ups, but I can learn all that within the probation period. Yeah, well, that's a part of it. I mean, the thing about management is that the language of business is money, right? So once you step into that world, I mean, depending on what level you're at, but if you're a true manager, where you're actually a decision maker and you have financial responsibilities, you need to speak money, like you need to understand your way around financial statements and things like this. Now, don't worry, because, it's not the most complicated thing in the world. And if you have some time to learn it, that's fine. You can do it. But you do need that. If you've never been in that world before, you don't come from like an accounting background or something. That's why you need to take my my business course, right? This thing right here. That'll set you straight. Best bang for the buck around, too. Baby Tony says, do you think corporations look at people in their 40s as too old? Ageism. I'm looking for work right now and feel nervous about this as I've heard this. You really need to stop listening to rumors and stop being paranoid. That's kind of the first step of like living in this world. You need to like engage your critical thinking skills. Okay. Oh, I hear that they hate people here. No. Listen, yes, we seem to be talking about ageism today. I've seen ageism work both ways. I see it work both ways equally. I see it biased against old people, and I also see it biased against young people equally. Like I've said before, I don't see very many 21-year-old CEOs of Fortune 500 companies. Does that need to be addressed? I don't know. I also don't see very many 95-year-old cocktail waitresses. So, you know what I mean? Like it runs both ways. So it depends what you're trying to do. Just remember this. I adjust my camera and then the sun comes out. That's wonderful. I told you, since the dawn of time, man has longed to destroy the sun. And maybe with some recent developments in AI, maybe we just might. What was I talking about? Ageism, I think. It's like, just remember this. A lot of the stuff that they will tell you in HR, like some of the strange and unnatural ways that they think, most of it is crap. It is scientifically provable crap. For example, one of the things that a lot of recruiters say is that you shouldn't put experience that's older than 10 years old on your resume because it's irrelevant. I've heard that some people even go as short as 5 years. They say if the last time you did something was 5 years ago, you might as well leave it off your resume, because if you don't use it, you'll lose it. That's what I heard a recruiter say to me. And I've since taught recruiters, so I understand the theory of where it's coming from. It's crap, as evidenced by the fact that most people who are managers, who are running things, are older, because you do need more than 5 years experience to see enough to be able to be in a position where you can make at least semi-competent decisions about what's to be done. Right? So to answer your question, the answer is no. But the problem with these things is that everything happens some of the time. So there will be some organizations where they'll regard 40 as too old. There will be other organizations where they regard 30 as too old. You know what I'm saying? But most of the time, that's not the case. Okay? Now, the way to get ahead of that is to see if you can maintain a career progression that's in line with your age. So, for example, if you're in an entry-level job and you're 55 years old and you've been in that entry-level job for 30 years, they might treat you and regard you with the way that to you feels like ageism. And it's simply because two things. Number one, you break the mold. Most people in this job are not 55. They're usually 22. And secondly, their expectations are that once you've been in the role for, say, 5 years, you would either be, someone who doesn't work out, in which case you're gone, or you would probably be moving up after that. Since you have been there so long, you obviously have been there long enough to learn everything there is to know about this job. And if you're a little older, you could even be like training younger employees and stuff. So if you're the type of person, I'm not saying this is you, but I'm saying hypothetically, let's say you were the type of person that insisted on being in this entry-level job their entire career. You like the job, you want to stay here, right? But as you get older, you feel that you're encountering ageism more, and that's true because of those two reasons. One, most people in that job are not 55, and two, their expectations are for you that you would be moving upwards. And since you are not moving upwards, that causes them to question what might not be working or what is abnormal about this situation, right? So if by 55, a lot of people are at the point where they're managing people, they're managing teams of like 25 people, maybe they're the head of a department or something, or I don't know, like in some role that requires that amount of experience, then if you find yourself in that role when you're 55, nobody's going to exhibit ageism towards you, hopefully, because you are the average age for that position, because that position tends to require X many years of experience to be able to do properly, right? Or at least it's regarded that way, rightly or wrongly. Okay, so like that's kind of the thing, right? So if you stagnate, you can encounter what feels like ageism. I don't know if it is or not. It might be. Okay. And the other thing is that this is also unfair to people whose career doesn't follow a standard path. That's the other thing, right? This is all well and good for people who follow a standard career path. Then recruiters love them. Their resume is exactly what the recruiters are expecting, and there's no issues. But as we all know, most people don't always follow a standard career path. Most people don't. So the further you go away from a standard career path, the harder it is to look good to a recruiter. Fortunately, recruiters gatekeep 15% of jobs, not the other 85%. So you just don't go through a recruiter and your problems are solved. But that's what I have to say about ageism and this kind of thing. You're welcome to Alex Con. Hopefully that was useful. And to Baby Tony, who says some nice things. Mel says, okay, thank you again. You're welcome, Mel says. I have to sign off pretty soon, actually. I'm getting to my hard stop here. But I'll just answer these couple of questions here. Sheenan Grief says, I stopped putting my date of birth on my resume. Had funny experiences because I look way younger than I am. Okay, well, usually that's a problem that most people look forward to. It's like, you look 21, but you're really 67, like that's kind of a problem people would look forward to. Baby Tony says, exactly, bro. AI just might. Okay, right on. A Universal Woman, how can a career executive assistant move up? I started as an EA 30 years ago, and the leap to chief of staff seems like a far jump. I think I'm way worth more than the 25-year-old EA I was. Excellent question. The answer is I don't know, because I'm not an executive assistant, and I've never had an executive assistant that then left to go move in a standard career path. But here's what you do, okay? Go on LinkedIn. You might have to pay for the premium version of LinkedIn if you don't have it, or you could get the free month. I think this requires the premium stuff. But go on LinkedIn, do a people search, confine it to your hometown to start, and then do a search for executive assistant, okay? And what it's going to do is my audio choppy? What it's going to do is it's going to give you find a whole bunch of people that are executive assistants in your hometown, okay? Because the term executive assistant or EA appears on their profile, right? So either they are currently an EA or they are previously an EA. Now, start going through their profiles, look at essentially their work history. Now, have they all just moved vertically in as an EA, like as a silo, or have some of them moved out to other roles? And if you notice a pattern where some of them have moved sideways to, like, I don't know, let's say there's a job that you keep seeing. They work as an EA for 10 years, 20 years, and then all of a sudden they work as insert blank, accountant, I don't know. Okay. If you notice a pattern, okay, that suggests that this is a thing people are doing, right? Now, the other thing you can do is, since you're seeing these people, you can then reach out to them. You can send them a message. You could say, would I be able to have a brief phone call with you? I find your move from EA to this job quite interesting, actually. I'm an EA myself, and I'd very much like to ask you about your experience making that transition, if that's something that I can trouble you for, and some people will say no, some people won't respond, but some people might say yes. And then you can talk to them and say, like, why did you move like that? Why that? What's the thing? And they might tell you, well, it turns out that, with your EA career, that means you're strong in all these different areas. Now, it turns out if you tack on this one skill, like say, you take an accounting course or whatever, I don't know, that qualifies you to move into this role because you now have everything you need to move into this role. So, that's something you might not have realized. So something like that. So do that kind of work and see what other people have done. And then you can, if you see anything interesting or you see any trends, you can then start reaching out to people if you choose to. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. Says the rain says only a mobile YouTube desktop is fine. Okay, excellent. Okay, hopefully this was useful. We got 27 people here. Check out my courses. This is the one that talks about communication skills, which we talked about today. So if you're looking to improve yourself in that area, get that course. It's linked in the description box below. And the other one is this that people here may be interested in. If you're looking for all my advice in one place, you want to break into the hidden job market, and you're an introvert and you're looking for something that kind of is tailored to that, to your preferences, check this out. Link in the description below. And I've done videos on all of these. So thanks, everyone. You guys are awesome. Thanks for being here and asking some intelligent questions. I will be back in just under half an hour, actually, on this channel with a different live stream. So I might see you then. Take care.